Is the motion seconded? The member for Barton.
Indeed, the motion is seconded, Mr Speaker. In 2019, we don't need to read another story in the media about horrific abuse, and we don't need to wait another minute. What we need is a royal commission. Yeah. Every single member of this House has had in their electorate office parents and people with a disability. You all know exactly what we are talking about. You have all sat with these people and gave them the assurances they need. It should be a point of deep shame for the Conservative government that the Parliament is again debating the need to call a royal commission to inquire into the violence and abuse of people with a disability. We already know that 90% of women with intellectual disability have been sexually assaulted, and for 60% of these women it occurs before they are 18. We all know children with disability are at least 3 times more likely to experience abuse than any other children. It is time for a royal commission. The facts and the stories are numerous, horrific, and we all know them. For far too long, this Liberal government has heard the calls of people begging them to take the steps to address the terrible abuse of people with disability, and the Labor government would and resolutely done nothing at all. In May 2017, the Leader of the Opposition announced that the Labor government, as he said, would establish such a royal commission into the violence and abuse of people with a disability upon forming government. But here we are, almost 2 years later, still trying to convince the Conservatives that the abuse of people with disability is a serious problem and it must be addressed. We all know the power and the importance of a royal commission, and this issue, this subject and the prevalence of the abuse deserves nothing less than a royal commission. And that is what we are asking for on behalf of the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that we all see on a regular basis in our electoral office. A royal commission is necessary, as the Leader of the Opposition says, for many reasons. Some of them he's outlined. But a royal commission will also improve services and supports into the future, including fixing some of the problems with the rollout of the NDIS. Labor has carefully considered the recommendations of the Senate Community Affairs Committee inquiry into violence and abuse and neglect against people with a disability. The first recommendation of that report was the recommendation calling on a royal commission into the abuse of people with disability. It is an important statement to have been made. We also say very strongly that Labor believes that people with a disability have the right to be heard, to be believed. We will not allow these sickening crimes to be swept under the carpet while the Conservatives continue to bury your heads in the sand. The Liberals think that the NDIS quality and safeguarding framework will be sufficient. No, it won't. A royal commission is required, nothing less. We owe it to the many thousands of people that we talk to constantly. We owe it to the many thousands of people with disability that have experienced abuse and neglect. We owe it to the many thousands of families of people whose children have a disability that have gone through the horror that the Leader of the Opposition outlined, gone through the horror of knowing that their child was abused, going through the horror, and try and put yourself in those people's, those parents, those families' shoes. If you put yourself into their shoes, you will know that there is nothing less required on this issue than a royal commission. We have put it out clearly 2 years ago that that's what's required. And please, I say to the government, listen, if not to me or the Leader of the Opposition or this side of the House. Listen to the people that you have spoken to, the families that you have spoken to in your electoral offices, and stay true and strong to the things that you said to those people. You know a Royal Commission is required, and I ask you to agree to one.
The question is that the motion moved by the Leader of the Opposition be agreed to. I call the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr.